this Meticulous Moments interview today with my wonderful brother and friend, Justin Brien. Justin, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's about time we've been able to connect. I know we've tried to in the past, and life happens. But we're here today, and I'm very, very fortunate to do this with you.
Thank you so much, Justin. I was thinking the exact same words when you said life happens. That was actually going through my mind, because everything, we have so many moving parts all the time, and we have to make sure that we stay, in tune and in motion. So you and I have been talking for months. I've gotten to know you so well over Messenger, and we had a virtual coffee as well. I remember that so clearly, and it's such a blessing to have you here, because you are an inspiration to so many people. And before we go into our interview, I just want to read your bio to the audience for those members who are not acquainted with you yet. So I'm going to read your bio, and then we'll hop right in. Justin Brien is a mental health advocate, inspirational speaker, and a professional executive coach. He's a husband and also a father of 2 amazing kids. He's certified through the Rayner Institute and is a certified Robbins, Madanes, I don't know if I say that correctly, Strategic Intervention coach.
Yes.
He's also the author of Chasing Shadows. And we're going to focus on that today, Fighting the Monster Within, and the creator of the Stronger You project that takes people on a journey to find purpose, potential, and possibilities. Justin believes in the power of finding your why, and that sometimes you have to enter the dark room to build the lighthouse. I absolutely love that description. So tell us more about you, Justin. You have had a lot of experiences. You have had a tough road. We would love to know more about you.
Well, yeah, it's that tough road kind of developed me into the person that I am today. I wouldn't be it without those experiences, the traumas, the loss, the choices that I brought upon myself. Some I went through because life happened. But I was diagnosed with clinical depression, which is a major depression, which is a sadness that persists for longer than 2 weeks at a time. I wasn't diagnosed with that till 28 years old. That I was diagnosed with social and general anxiety, to where I had an algorithm of how many drinks I would have before I left my house to, hang out with friends, to play the sports that I loved. And then at 30, I was diagnosed with ADHD, that's attention deficit hyperactive disorder, which made it very hard for me to concentrate in one-on-one conversations, to stay focused on things, and, made me very impulsive. Now, from a young age, I struggled. I didn't struggle in school. I was smart, I was athletic. I had friends, but I struggled with my self-worth, my self-worth, my self-confidence, my self-esteem. I was a late bloomer growing up, so I was always behind my friends, and they were good friends, but I was starting to compare myself to them. Right? I got to the point where I wanted to be everybody else but me, and I always put everybody up on a pedestal, and it's because I felt so low about myself, and I didn't know what to do with those insecurities, right? So what did I do with them? Well, I put them in a bag, that's self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence, and I took it with me through high school into my adulthood. And when that bag started to get heavy, I opened it up, and instead of unpacking it, I started to add guilt, shame, anger, depression, substances, and eventually suicidality in that bag. And I put it on my back, and I kept walking. But I didn't drink much in high school. It wasn't for me. Yeah, I'd go to the parties and I'd drink every now and then. But when I got out of high school, I really found what alcohol gave me. And it gave me self-esteem and self-confidence and self-worth. Yeah. But what I didn't realize was that everything it was giving me was fake. Everything it started to take from me was very real. By the time I was 24 years old, I was a full-blown alcoholic, drinking every single day, and I was bartending downtown Vancouver. And that was the first time I did drugs for the very first time. I did cocaine at 24, and I didn't remember the night, so I phoned up my buddy. I'm like, "Hey man, what happened?" And he's like, "You don't remember?" And then he told me, and it's not like I was against other people doing drugs. I didn't judge them, but it just wasn't for me. But it turned out, holy cow, I did them. And then all of a sudden he said something to me that you probably shouldn't say to a person with my mindset, and he was like, "Man, you were funny last night." All right then and there, it clicked. I have alcohol for confidence. I have drugs to be funny. I have a special juice, a superpower that's going to make me super Justin. Unfortunately for me, I was the only one that thought I was super Justin. But there was a time at 24, I was walking across the bridge in Vancouver, and a thought ran through my head. It says, Justin, do you drink too much? And I said, no. Right? And then I kept taking a couple more steps, and I said, Justin, are you an alcoholic? I got this warm feeling walked up through my body. And I said this word for word. I go to work, I pay my bills, I'm too smart to be an alcoholic, and I'm not a lowlife. And that's exactly how I thought. Well, after that time, 6 months later, I moved back to Salmon Arm, and I'm managing a nightclub. And I had to get a ride home because I lost my license for drinking and driving, which, tended to be a normality for me. It's just like, no license. And then on the way home, because I had to get a ride home from a buddy, we started talking about the topic of depression. And all of a sudden, I looked at him and I said this, like, what do I know about depression? This is like 14 years ago. I said, depression is for the weak. Depression is an excuse. You got to man up. You got to go to work and you got to pay your bills. We don't talk about our feelings.
Yeah.
Now, when I look back on it, I don't know why I said it back then, but I definitely know why I said it now. It's because I was trying to be stronger on the outside than feeling on the inside. I still had that feeling of less than. 4 years old, I had two major problems: substance use and my mental health. But at 24 years old, I'm ignoring two major problems with my substance use and my mental health. Now, I'd like to say, after that day, I got on the straight and narrow, but, I started moving around a lot, getting like different jobs for drinking. Finally at 28 years old, I'm back home, and I finally asked for help. And so I finally got diagnosed with all those things. And then I met up with this girl, and we broke up because she left me for my drinking. But we hung out a couple times, and then one time she phones me and says, Justin, I'm pregnant. I was like, holy cow, this is in my middle of my using days. I was actually off of work because they asked me to take a leave of absence to get myself better. Yeah. So I'm like, how am I going to have a kid? She gave me the option. She's like, you can be in this kid's life, or you don't have to be, but I'm keeping it. I'm like, I want to be in this kid's life. So we got back together, and I went to rehab. I got to go to rehab. I got to get better for my son. Well, I went to rehab, and I went to all my classes, but I ate, worked out twice a day. And the first thing I said when I got to rehab was, you know what, I'm not done drinking forever. Well, what did I just accomplish? I just spent 35 days away from my pregnant girlfriend, in a house full of 60 other guys, getting sober. And the first thing I said was, I'm not done drinking forever. Well, you could probably guess what happened. A month later, we have our son. 2 months later, I'm making poor decisions, hitting the bottle again. And 6 months after that, my girlfriend had to make probably the toughest decision that she'd ever have to make, and pick up my son and leave me at my lowest point. And I don't blame her. I was in no shape to have a kid around. I was using alcohol to cope, and I was refusing to give it up. And I was going to some counseling appointments, but I wouldn't go to all of them. I wasn't, committing to that. I'm happier. I'd be like, well, I don't need my medication. I don't need my counseling. I can do this alone. Then I went 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 9 months sober. I would see somebody else drinking, and I'd be like, well, if you can do it, I can do it. And then I'd start drinking again. And then all of a sudden, one would lead to two would lead to three, and all of a sudden I'm blacked out, and it's time with my son, time at work. So I started going down that path again. I just became suicidal for 6 straight years. And it got to the point where, I became an organ donor. I got milk thistle for my liver and kidney flesh because I was preparing my body to donate it to somebody, because I thought everyone else deserved it more than me, because I knew everything I was doing. I was picking up that drink, I was picking up that drug. I was not only hurting myself, but I was hurting people around me, right? And I wasn't doing anything productive. And I really got to that point where I thought my kid deserved a better father than me. And I thought, taking my life would give him that opportunity. At one point, I was hospitalized for the 3rd time with alcohol poisoning. It was the 2nd time in 2 weeks. And my ex brought my son down so I could see him. And when she brought him down, I'll never forget the way he looked at me and what he said. We walked through the curtains, and he looked at me, and then he looked at his mom, and then he looked at me and he looked at his mom again. And he says, Mommy, Daddy. That's the time it kind of clicked. I was like, well, this kid deserves a better father. You know, not a father's going to miss time with him because he's using, or time with him because he's in the hospital with alcohol poisoning. But, you know, a father is going to teach him the ways of life. When he falls down, he'll be able to pick it up. And I started to think, you know, that's just not me, right? I am not that guy. You know, I still went down the beaten path, and I finally went to rehab for the second time, right? And I went to rehab for the second time because I started to listen to motivational speaking. And I found out that all these speakers had one thing in common. It was find your why. Now, I didn't know who I was listening to in the beginning because it was YouTube videos.
Yeah.
But it was Eric Thomas, Les Brown, Inky Johnson, and Trent Shelton. Now, these guys are some pretty big known speakers. I had no idea. But hey, you know what? They probably had a part in saving my life. Yeah. So I started to ask myself, I started to question myself, Justin, what is your why? What is your why that drive you and motivate you to get better? And I started to look at that little boy again, and I started to reframe my thoughts. And I'm like, well, if I can get better for him, I get better for me. If I get better for me, I can help other people. Now, a lot of people are going to say you have to do it for yourself, and you should. But for me and a lot of guys that I knew in rehab, we couldn't do it for ourselves. So what we had to do was we had to find a why, grab a hold of it, and take it with you everywhere. You know, everybody has a why. Yes. And 100% it's you, right? It's 100% you, because if you do it for something else, if you get better for someone else, you're still essentially getting better for yourself, right? True. So I went back to rehab, and then I got out. I did all my work. You know, gratitude, journaling, mindfulness, the power of acceptance and forgiveness. Like if something happens to you, like an event or trauma or a person, well, the first thing you have to do is accept it. You have to accept that it truly happened. Now, you don't have to like it. So you have to admit that it's a true event and this really happened in my life. And you have to accept it so that you can forgive it. Yes. And you forgive it so that you can move on, right? And the thing about forgiveness is if it's a person that hurts you, you don't have to forgive them to their face. You don't even have to know about it. But you have to do it so you can stop living in your past and create that future that you desire. Now, for guys like me, the thing that we had to accept is something that we did, or accept ourselves, and then we had to forgive ourselves. So that was one of the things that I really had to actually learn in coaching, as well as the power of acceptance and forgiveness, right? Yes. And moving past. Hey, that doesn't mean that you gotta forget about it, right? Yeah. Live there anymore. So I got out of rehab and I felt great. You know, I felt awesome. And then all of a sudden, I became a car salesman, which is, holy, is that for another different breed of people? I have anxiety, and when I go become a car salesman, I did not do well, you know. And I hit the pink cloud, and then one day I had my son, and I gave him to my mom. I'm like, Mom, you need to take care of him. And I didn't know what to do because I couldn't control my thoughts. And I started drinking again. And then finally, on January 4th, I found myself sitting in my basement alone in the dark because I have curtains closed. I have tinfoil on the windows, and I have towels as well. And I just found myself looking around my basement and looking at his pictures, looking at his toys, you know, feeling the emptiness. Thinking, Justin, if you don't get help, your son is going to grow up without his biological father. You have two choices here. You can do it, or you can get help. And I phoned my mom and said, Mom, can you take me to the hospital? So finally she came home and she took me to the hospital, and with my dad to my left of me and my mom in front of me and a counselor to my right, I finally admitted out loud that, you know, I had a plan. You know, if I was going to continue to feel the way that I did, and I had a plan, and that plan was to end it. But when I said that, it took half the weight off my shoulders. It felt good to say it, but I knew I still had a battle. I knew I still had a journey ahead of me, right? But from that day, I have been sober ever since. I've actually back together with the mother of my children now. She's now my wife, and we welcomed another baby girl. But I've been able to embark on a new journey of sobriety, you know, life coaching, speaking, inspiring. I have a book coming out soon, but I really had to go through the trenches and experience life at its highs and its extreme lows.
It's so phenomenal to sit and listen to your story and to notice how many times you had the opportunity to give up, yet you pressed on. How many times you had the opportunity to say, this is it, and yet something within you said, let me just try one more time. Let me try one more time. It's one more go. And here you are because you did exactly that. And yes, it was a roller coaster, but that shaped you into the amazing coach and speaker and also that you are today. So looking back, those things really taught you life lessons, but it's also teaching our audience life lessons because there's someone in the audience that needs to hear that the struggle is real, but it can be over if you just decide not to give up. And I love the title of your first book, Chasing Shadows, facing the monster within. Tell us about the title and what the book is about. What can we expect when we read that book?
Well, chasing shadows means like I was chasing worth, I was chasing happiness, joy, meaning, all through substances,
Yeah.
materials, social media, and women, meeting women. I was chasing for all of that. So I was chasing shadows because the only thing that can bring me meaning and happiness, purpose, and healing is me. It's
Yes.
it's falling in love with the person that I am, or becoming, or starting on that journey. Anyways, it's gonna be hard to fall in love with yourself. One of the things I did for falling in love with myself was, I know that may sound weird, and like, but
No, it sounds
no,
perfect.
the more you love yourself, the more you give to other people. And I actually started to look at myself in the mirror and I said, hey, Justin, I love you. And regardless if I believed it or not, I would look in the mirror and say, Justin, I love you. And I, one of the things that helped me realize that I love myself was forgiving myself for my flaws, for my mistakes, for my past, and learning from them.
Yeah.
Right? You cannot change your past. You cannot go down that road. You cannot change them. And it's not a book. You don't have an eraser. But you are the author of your own book, and you can choose to write a new chapter, a new sentence, a new story. But you can learn from that old story, those old pages, right? You can go back, you can think back, chapter 2. Okay, you know what? I really messed up there. Okay, what can I write in chapter 16?
Yeah.
So my book is all about life stories. It starts how my struggles off as a kid. And I realized looking back, like I really did struggle as a kid. I was searching for love and connection through outside sources, right? Never searched them from within. And I really had no reason to have those self-esteem issues, self-confidence, self-worth issues, but I had them. And it's because I didn't learn how to deal with my operating system or my mental health at a very young age. And I didn't know about, your thought patterns, your belief system, how much the words that you say to yourself matter. So I took that all with me into my adulthood. Now I write about that in the book, and I go through my upbringing, playing hockey, and then moving to Vancouver. And then when I moved to Vancouver, becoming an alcoholic, living the gypsy lifestyle, I guess, moving here to here to here, always leaving a trail of mistakes. Then finally moving back home, becoming suicidal, having kids, and then becoming sober. And then, I actually start to talk about life after I became sober, because after I became sober and I got back together with the mother of my children, we had another battle. My daughter was born with Down syndrome, and with that comes complications. 50% of them have heart complications. A lot of them have intestinal surgeries, a webbing in their intestine. She actually had both. So we got out of the Ronald McDonald House about a year and a half ago, but we were there for about 6 months, and she had her heart surgery and her intestinal surgery. She almost didn't make it, and that was another battle in itself. Being down there, just seeing your child suffer, not being able to do anything for her, and along the way, me and Renee, I'm supposed to be a father of 5, I guess you could say. However, I'm only a father of 2. 3 along the way haven't made it through pregnancy, and it's that's tough. It's tough to think, but I know how common it is. One of those happened recently, and it really threw me off like that. And then my grandfather passing away. Like, he was supposed to see my book. He's a big part of my book. He's my role model. Yeah. And that those two big events were something where I had to take some time, because I kind of shut down, and I started. I'm supposed to be a father of 5. My grandpa's supposed to make it. I had to accept that it happened. Yes. I had to reframe my thoughts again and be like, okay, well, maybe my grandfather's up there looking after those kids that, I know have that hopefully one day I'm going to meet. Yes. But I had to accept it, and I had to forgive it. That, what, you're not guaranteed. You can't live by the supposed to's, right? And that might be a tougher way of looking at it. But it's the truth. If you think this is supposed to happen, well, then you can set yourself up for some hurt. Like, I was really looking forward to being a dad again, but it wasn't in my cards. It wasn't in my plan. Yeah. But there's still other options there if you want to adopt and stuff like that. So that's actually not in my book, but I write about things that I've learned: recovery, redemption, loss, grief, life lessons. So the third part of my book, I put into 3 books or 3 parts: getting alcohol, after alcohol, and then life lessons. And then I talk about lessons like your needs and how to make changes, and your self-limiting beliefs, and self-care and self-love, and finding that support network. So it's full of stories. It's like an autobiography, personal development book that I really hope people enjoy. And at the end of every chapter, there's a question that you need to answer. Well, you don't have to, but I would suggest it. I would encourage it, invite people to answer that, and just to see. There's questions that I want you to ask yourself in the beginning of the book, and then you ask yourself those again at the end of the book to see if your answers have changed. But it also gives you viable instructions on how you can improve it.
I love that. And I want to commend you, Justin, because we've been speaking for a long time. You're my brother, and I really respect you. And I'll tell you what I noticed through the months that we have been conversing and talking, especially about Meticulous Moments and your book. And you are consistent. You are consistent. You are strong. You are mentally very, very strong. I mean, you faced so many things in the last few months, and you are an exceptional father and husband to your family. You just give them the best, that support, that structure that you put in. And we hear your daughter's beautiful little voice in the background. I mean, you are daddy 100%. I mean, you love them so much. And I agree with you. We don't always understand why things happen, but we face those things, we deal with those things, and like you said, we forgive and we move on. And you are so good at that. I remember at some point in time you had an ear infection, and you were so positive still. You weren't feeling well, and you were still positive about your day and the things that you had to do. And that speaks to people. And I love the fact that in your bio, I'm going to go back to that sentence, you are a mental health advocate. Audience, I can tell you, Justin is mentally extremely strong and an inspirational speaker. And that shines through in everything that you do, on screen, online, offline. You live the things that you teach about. You live the things that you write about. And I would highly suggest that people contact you if they are going through a situation where they are addicted to substances, that they reach out to you. If they are suicidal, that they reach out to you. If they need coaching, if they need that person to keep them accountable, Justin Brien is the person to connect with. Now, I read another title of a book, The Stronger You Project. Tell me about the Stronger You Project, because I would love for the audience to know more about that as well.
So that is actually what I call my life coaching program. So there's opportunities. So I have 3 different ones. Well, I'm going to 4 different ones kind of. So I have a 12-week Stronger You Project one-on-one all access, where you work with me over 12 weeks. We go over modules, homeworks. I hold you accountable. There's daily check-ins. But you really work with me for over 12 weeks to really make a huge lifestyle change. But then I have the Stronger You Project, Awaken Warrior, which is a 10-week men's group that's going to start on the 24th. That's just the group for men over 10 weeks. Then I have the Stronger You Project, Mindset Reset, Back to the Basics, Do It Yourself program. It's designed for 6 weeks, but to do it yourself, you do it when you have time, right? And it's the thing about that program is this: we're looking for progress over perfection.
Love that.
The Stronger You Project is kind of my coaching.
Yeah.
So that's the umbrella that it kind of falls under.
And you mentioned something now, and I hear your beautiful daughter, she seconds that phrase, progress over perfection. I think it's a huge pitfall that, we are conditioned in society that everything in our life has to be perfect. We have to be perfect, and that just doesn't happen. Nobody's perfect. We're all working through things in our lives. Nothing that we'll ever do perfection doesn't exist, but progress. What a wonderful approach that is. I've never heard that before. And I would like to ask you, here at Meticulous Moments, we love to talk about leadership, gratitude, and community upliftment. And I want to ask you, leadership-wise, what's the toughest lesson that you've learned as a leader in society? What was something that maybe something happened in the corporate world, maybe in your family, maybe with friends, but was there a tough lesson that you had to face and just like sit and digest, mentally?
Well, I was the general manager of a restaurant here until I quit in September to go full time with my coaching and speaking. I think one of the biggest learning lessons I had was sometimes just not saying what was on my mind. Right. When I worked there for 3 years, and they helped do a fundraiser for me so I could go and be for my family, so I could be down there with them. Yeah. And I had so much gratitude for what they did that sometimes I wouldn't say what's on my mind.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to, because they did such a good thing for me. So, and that's not a sign of great leadership, right? You need to be able to, but I mean, they would always come to me. The great thing was that they trusted me. They would come to me with anything personal. They would open up to me. But if I could pick one thing, it would be like that I needed to sometimes, not all the time, just say what was on my mind. Hey, listen, that's overstepping. Hey, you can't do that. If I had to say anything, it's speak your mind. Don't hold it in. Yeah. If they don't agree with it, they don't agree with it, and that's fine. You come back, you have a meeting about it, and you talk it over. And it is okay to take a break from each other. If you and a staff member aren't seeing eye to eye, take a breather, come back, and rehash it out.
Great advice. And I have to tell you, I've been guilty of that exact same thing. I was in the ministry for 15 years, and when I just went into the ministry, I often didn't speak my mind. I often kept quiet because I'm the newbie, I'm still young and fresh. And sometimes people walk all over you when you don't speak up, because they just subconsciously think that would be okay. And I don't think it's always necessarily that they plan to do that. It's that, we allow that. And I've had to really navigate and do that introspection in my life to find that balance like you have, to say, okay, well, it is okay for me to say if something doesn't sit right. It's okay if I don't agree. People are not going to dislike me if I don't share their opinion. They are actually going to respect me. And if they don't agree, we'll just agree to disagree and still walk in love. And a break is also good. I agree. In the ministry I've seen many pastors do that, and coaches as well, and speakers in our sector that you and I work in. Sometimes they take a breather, they take a sabbatical, and that's not a bad thing at all. Removing yourself from that situation. Now, I always say to people, and I chuckle when I do so, when I was in the ministry, I can count on these two hands how many times I did not attend church on a Sunday, either preaching or leading worship or being in church in 15 years. I don't think I even missed 10 services. And when 2020 came, I believe that God said, well, Juanita, you are now going to take a forced sabbatical because you have to restructure your life, and your program. So thank you for that wonderful answer. Now, talking about gratitude, I always realize that your conversation is always positive and it's always uplifting, and you are always grateful, for life and for the beautiful family, your wife and your children that you have. Tell us, what are you grateful for today, for this year? What are you looking forward to?
Well, what am I grateful for right now is yesterday. I'm very fortunate that I got to. I lived a life of substance use for 16 years.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate that I got to speak in front of my grandfather, my grandmother, my mom, my dad, Renee, my wife. My son will see me speak one day, but my speech, my keynote that I usually do is not for children, maybe grade 8 and above.
Yeah.
But yesterday, I've had the opportunity to speak at schools, businesses, organizations, sports teams, restaurants, mills, mining companies, because I've lived such a gypsy life, and I've done so many things, from managing restaurants to hockey to working up north on rigs and stuff like that I've been able to speak at so many different organizations by keeping my main points together, but elaborating. So yesterday I got to speak at Work BC, which is Work British Columbia, which helps people get jobs. So they helped me to get funding for my coaching course when I got myself out of the hospital. But it was on mental health and inclusivity, right? Hiring people with mental health disabilities. Because when you struggle with your mental health, forms of like depression, anxiety, ADHD, all that can be debilitating for people, right? If it keeps you from work, right? It can be classified under disability. But I also got to speak on how I was given a chance, and I turned that chance into something more by serving other people. But I also got to I got to speak on having a daughter with Down syndrome, and how that when I grow up, I watch her when I grow up. I am a male. Maybe I still do teen. But when she grows up, I hope and I pray that she's going to get the same opportunities, the same acceptance and inclusion that I got, and that I got to take her up on stage with me. My wife brought her over, and I got to walk the stage with my daughter in front of 100 and something people, and I got to show them, like, listen, because Down syndrome babies, when people find out, there are some countries, and I'm not saying this to judge anybody because maybe they're not in a good spot, but there are some countries that have 100% termination rate. And I just wanted to show people what can happen when they get a chance, right? And she's still fed through a tube in her stomach, and she's been in 4 or 5 different hospitals. She's a trooper, but I got to take her on stage and just show everybody, my daughter that has you can tell she's visible characteristics, stuff like that. But it was really cool to be able to take a part of me on stage.
I love that. And I was thinking while you were talking about her, your face lights up when you speak about her. She is a little trooper, and she's daddy's little girl because she never gives up. She's a survivor, and she's going to show the world a thing or two. And I want to tell the audience, before we started today, Justin was actually, listen to this, he was putting her to bed. And, we said she has to go to sleep first because mommy's working. Of course, we are family orientated. And she woke up just before we went live. And I said to Justin, bring her into the interview. Let's get her on. She can sit on your lap and we can do the interview. Would you like to introduce her to the audience?
Yeah, I can do that.
I know she's there. And she's got a beautiful special name. Her mom is half Japanese. Would you like to tell the audience her name? I don't know if I pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, it's Osha.
Osha, we love you, Osha.
Please. Stop for about 5 minutes.
She was like, I'm going to sleep, but now I hear Daddy's on an interview. I also want to be in that interview. So you go around speaking. You're a salted public speaker, and Osha is a little girl, And you know what they do is they watch us. They watch what we do. They listen what we say. And they copy us, Justin. And you are raising a very, very strong woman right there. She's going to be a very strong woman one day. So I want to commend you being a good daddy.
Yes, so it's funny because so mommy's mommy, right? When she gets upset, it takes mommy to calm her down. However, the only word she knows is dada. So I have that one on Renee. I don't think Osha knows that she's saying dada, what it means, but it's funny because Renee can only calm her down. But then when she calms her down, Osha will look at her and say dada.
She's like, yes, you calm me down, but I prefer daddy.
It's funny. So on stage yesterday, I'm like, yeah, Osha is. I hope she gets the opportunity from other people. She'll get every opportunity from us as parents, except for dating.
Oh, okay.
She's not allowed to date until she's 40. No dating. Until maybe when she moves out, she'll be allowed.
I said the same thing to my daughter. I said to her, the day you leave my house is the day you get married. You're going to have a courtship. You're not going to date, and I have to approve. So so she just always laughs. But that's the thing, just in the world it's difficult out there for the youngsters, and we have to protect them. I know we have to put them out there, but we also, as especially little girls, we have to protect them. And I believe that she has the most phenomenal parents. And tell us a little bit more about Renee, because you guys are such a beautiful couple. My goodness.
So she's a CEA, so she's a certified educational assistant at schools. She works with kids that need a little bit more help, and she loves doing it.
Yeah,
it fills up her bucket. She's a very big heart. She's very empathetic. Yeah. Every time we watch a movie, she's crying at some part of the movie. But she's just a very beautiful person, and I'm very fortunate to be with her because a lot of people would have left and not came back, but we were broken up for 3 years, and we ended up getting back together and had a child 3 years later, and we've been through a lot together. But she cares about people, right? Like for instance, yesterday after my speech, people kept coming up to me and talking to me and asking me questions about their family members, but they went up and talked to Renee too, and Renee sat there with people and got to know them. And when we were down in Vancouver for her birth, people did a fundraiser for us, and there was a time where I wanted to move to Hastings. So East Hastings, Vancouver is for the homeless, and it's a very big homeless and drug population. Yeah. And I almost moved there, right? I felt like the black sheep, and I wanted to disappear. Yeah. Fortunately for me, I didn't. I stayed where I was, and I got myself sober. So we took some of that money that we got, people did a fundraiser for us, and we went and made 140 bags full of stuff, a bunch of cereal and milk and granola bars and juice boxes, and went down to East Hastings and set up a table, and we just handed it out for a couple hours. And Renee she sat there, and I was a little bit worried. I'm a 6'3", 235 pound guy. But Renee's little, so I was skeptical, right? But I met a guy who lived on the streets for 10 years, who's now an advocate and a TEDx speaker, and he came with us. But Renee was just in the trenches. She walked to every single person, handing out stuff that they couldn't walk, or they needed stuff, and she's got a massive heart, and I couldn't be luckier.
Beautiful couple. I saw the photo of you and her, and I noticed that you are much taller than she is, and you are just amazing together. Look at the beautiful family that you've created. I want to ask you if you have any words of wisdom. Hello, my love. If you have any words of wisdom for someone that's facing depression or anxiety, the topics that we talked about, what is the first step they can take to get to a better place? Because I believe we all have that fight inside of us. There's something that urges us to take one more step.
Well, I think Obviously, ask for help. As hard as it is, ask for help. I mean, I've been to over 100 doctor's appointments. I've spent 77 days in rehab. I've been to 45 addiction appointments, 19 psychiatrists, 10 psychologists, and I've tried 8 different medications. I'm not on meds right now. But one of the biggest things, I found my why. My why to live. And because I got better for my son, I got better for me. And now one of my whys is me, but it's also helping other people. But ask for help, find your why, look in the mirror and realize that you deserve to be here, that you were created on purpose for a purpose. And what you're here to make a difference, whether you believe it or not. Like you're not a mistake. You're here for a reason. Maybe that reason is it could be to be a janitor, clean up and help after kids. It could be to be, work at McDonald's right now. It could be to be a parent. It could be to be anything right now. Your purpose, you're here for a purpose, and your purpose doesn't have to be some grand old thing. I fell into coaching and speaking because of the life that I lived, right? And it became my purpose. And I didn't find my purpose until I was 36, right? Yeah. But ask for help. If you're struggling, and it's the dark, that tunnel seems dark, you just have to keep on walking, because at the end of every tunnel is light.
True. That's the truth. And, you are the perfect person for people to reach out to. You can help them discover their why, because you've been through the process. You faced the obstacles, you overcame them successfully. We've spoken about leadership. You're a great leader in society. I commend you on your leadership and helping people. We've spoken about gratitude. I know that you live a life of gratitude every single day. Your wife and you and your wife are both, involved in community upliftment, because that's your heart. I believe that God placed you together to have this beautiful family and to do all these great things in the world. And I'm just so blessed to have you here. I believe your website address is justinbrien.com. Is that where they can sign up for your program?
Yeah, they can reach out. They can do the do-it-yourself. Also on there, I have something called the Mental Health Menu, which is it's free, absolutely free. You just download it. And if you want to take it a step further, so the Mental Health Menu is thought-provoking questions and coping mechanisms. It's just a one sheet poster that you can put up in your kitchen, put up in your bathroom, put up in your bedroom, put it in your car, put it on your front door. Actually, one of the things that helped me the most was I had sticky notes in my house. I put them on my front door. Messages, my vision board, everything was on my front door before I left my house, or in my bathroom mirror. And so that you can put anywhere. But if you want to take it a step further, I have this thing called the Mental Health Menu 14-day challenge. It's $3.99. What it does is it helps you implement the mental health menu over 14 days so you don't get overwhelmed. And what it does is it makes you choose one of those coping mechanisms and implement it every day. Then you can choose which one worked best. Which one do I want to continue with? But it also gives you, what are my mental health goals? Has some questions in there. What went well? What didn't? And then there's more tools and coping mechanisms at the back of it. So you can do that. There's that do-it-yourself program. You can sign up for my Awakened Warrior. You can sign up to coach with me one-on-one. Or if you're looking for a speaker, I have my past speaker.
I loved it. I was about to say, I'm definitely going to invite you onto the Captor Connection Conference. We're having the third conference later this year, and you are definitely getting an invite. And, when talking about the sticky notes, I love to do sticky notes in my office. Sometimes I can be a little bit radical. I will write the sticky notes and then I'll lose them and then I'll write them again. But that's just in a busy day. But my favorite thing to do is to take lipstick and write on the mirror, because then I know it's stuck there,
Yeah.
and it won't go anywhere. And I just want to say thank you so much, Justin. You, Renee, Osha, and what is your son's name again?
Teo.
Teo, you are all part of the Meticulous Moments family now, and we are going to keep on praying for you. We're going to keep on cheering you on. Osha, we love you. I'm sending you big hearts from South Africa, and you're such a beautiful princess, and we're just so proud of you as a family. And Justin, you are amazing. Thank you for being such a wonderful friend, and we'll see you in the next session.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Justin. Bye, Justin. Bye, Osha. Ta-da.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're the #1 fastest growing community and tribe of some of the highest level entrepreneurs all around the country and around the world. We're in 36 states across the US, in 11 international countries, and over 240 plus members, growing every single day. And I'm honored, excited, and I'm glad to say that I'm proud to be the official sponsor of the Meticulous Moments podcast with Juanita Kapp. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm excited for this.
Hey everybody, my name is Patrick Rude. I'm the owner of Rude Financial Services, a proud sponsor of the Meticulous Moments podcast, hosted and directed by the beautiful, strong, and intelligent Juanita Kapp. I cannot tell you enough about what this woman has done with this podcast and the effect that she has had on me and all of the other sponsors and people that listen. Don't miss it.